Welcome, Internet, to the PixelPlay podcast, your weekly podcast where we get together to discuss all the news, rumors, and discussions going on in the video game world. I am one of your co-hosts, Kaylan, aka Ktastrophy, joined as always by my co-host, Adam, CSRadical. In this week's episode, we are going to be talking about the major leaks that occurred this week and whether or not leaks are bad for the gaming industry as a whole. We're going to be talking about first impressions in games and whether they even matter. We're going to be talking about PlayStation VR 2 not having backwards compatibility with its initial system, and we have an Untimely review for Void Bastards. If you like that and you want to see more of what we do, you could always find our old episodes by searching for PixelPlay on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to see our lovely faces while we do it, we also post a video podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Couple things to note just for my housekeeping. We've got some huge news. We're going to be doing a revamp of the show later in October, so look forward to that. This show will continue to exist, but we're going to be bringing on a new host. You may have heard him from our Cartridges and Quarters, Jin and Chris. He's going to be joining the crew as well. And yeah, look forward to some new changes and some excitements. We're shooting for late October, but we'll have more details as we get closer. Adam, I think that's about covers all the intro. Let's jump into it. How are you doing? How's your week been? What have you been up to?
Doing fantastic. You'll be happy to know I started Deathloop today.
Hey, initial impressions. How does it feel? What do you think?
I was worried that I would hate it immediately, and the answer is nope. I am doing just fine in the booting people repeatedly until they die simulator. Because honestly, as soon as I realized that's so much more fun than slowly sniping them with the nail pistol that you get given for stealth, quote unquote. Booting people is just way more fun. Because in any game, Spartan kicking just seems to be the best thing to do.
Yeah, the nail gun was garbage. I never used the nail gun. That was a garbage weapon that I didn't even bother with.
Yeah, well, I mean, they also just put in some new DLC. So there's this laser gun that's almost For Destiny fans, you almost look at it, it almost feels like a Vex Mythoclast, which is this freaking just destructively red laser beam that just destroys and incinerates stuff. Oh, it's beautiful.
I'm so excited to see what you think of that game because I honestly loved it. If you guys are new here, that was my game of the year. I think last year, game of the year.
Yeah.
So fantastic game. I liked it. I thought it was really, really unique. Have you gone through the loop yet a little bit? Have you died and come back yet?
I have finished. Well, I finished the tutorial loop, and then I finished a full loop after that, and maybe a little bit in change, just kind of because at this point now I'm just in the testing phases.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. It's a great game. I'm excited to see what your thoughts are on it. I'm still going through the New World Order is continuing strong, getting close. I think I'm at the end of the game, so probably we'll have it done by next week. Fantastic game. Absolutely loving it. Very much a strong contender for game of the year for me this year. But yeah, then I think I'm going to move on to Sifu. I still have that game to get into. I tried it. It was way too hard for the first round, and I'm like, I don't want to do another hard game after Elden Ring, so I switched over to
So instead you decided to just make a cult full of lambs, as it were.
No. I am the lamb. They are just a bunch of woodland creatures.
Oh, well.
This is not a spoiler, but you are sort of the last lamb in the world. I guess there's a prophecy that foretells of this evil creature coming back, and it's gonna be brought by a lamb. So they slaughtered all the lambs except you, and now you will extract revenge. Such a good game. Adam, big week this week for gaming news. Probably the biggest news this week was the hack at Rockstar Games for the great GTA 6 being revealed. Did you look at the screenshots at all that got released?
Not all of it because it was extensive, but I took a few peeks at images, a little couple of clips of certain mechanics and things that they're doing. There's nothing special about them, apart from the fact that, again, as we've discussed earlier on this show at an earlier time, you have a female character that you can play as. But when I looked at it, apart from, I guess, the mechanic of you being able to sit outside of your car and shoot a little bit differently than how it used to be, except it's literally the way that Saints Row has done it forever. That's the one different thing I saw. Everything else is yeah, that's a Grand Theft Auto game. Okay.
Yeah. The news that we got out of that I think is worth noting, they kind of talked a little bit about some of the reactions and stuff to the police, they're now going to surround an area and kind of have a little bit more tactical advantages that way. That's kind of some neat stuff, but Yeah, I didn't look too much into the thing. It's GTA 6. We know what we're expecting and what we're gonna
Yeah,
get.
like
So
what were those leaks going to do? Like they were going to make us realize like, "Oh my god, this game is going to be so different." No, it's not.
hmm.
Why would they ever make it different?
Yeah, because if I remember, they actually announced that they were gonna do like a Miami sort of area
Yeah.
for it, right? So like, there's nothing new there. The question, I don't want to spend too much time on the leaks. Like, if you saw the leaks, you saw them, great. If you didn't, you probably don't care. Adam, the question I had for you is, are leaks bad for the gaming industry? Talking from a developer's perspective, from a PR perspective, from a player's perspective, where do you fall? Like, obviously, there's the whole morality of leaks and like, or sorry, there's the whole legal aspect of NDAs, hacking, all that kind of stuff. Like, we're not going to get into that because that's obviously illegal. But from a moral and impact to the industry, where do you fall on leaks? Are they generally good or bad?
I mean, they're
Are
bad
they-
because it's essentially a crime's been committed. Like there's nothing beyond that you
But
can say. But how on the flip side, like contextually, like if we're talking from our perspective, it really
Mhm.
I think it really depends on what the game is. Like if this is something that's like supposed to be a secret that wasn't announced yet, I mean it'd
Mhm.
probably be cool. Like remember when screenshots were leaked out about that Harry Potter RPG that we didn't even know existed or is kind of like in limbo for so long and now is coming back. Like that generates buzz, but it wouldn't have generated the same amount of buzz if the trailer was dropped at, like whatever collection of, trailers there was, whether it was a Games Done or not a Games Done Quick, oh my god, Jeff Keighley's thing, Summer Game Fest, or like a PlayStation State of Play or Xbox like showcase or whatever else it was. It wouldn't be the same. In this specific case, like I said, crimes are committed. That's something that, the
Yeah,
authorities will handle. That's not the part that I care
legal
about really.
side, yeah.
Because they shouldn't be happening in the first place. But when they do, to us, I think it really depends on what it is, when it happens, and who it happens to. Because look, in some cases, it depends on what the leak is, and depending on who it is. Like if it was something unrelated to gaming and more like things going on in the company, like something that would get Bobby Kotick further in trouble. Well, hey, we'd be okay with those kind of leaks. In this specific case, it's GTA 6. I've seen stories about how the stock apparently tanked a little bit. Not much. I know a lot of people say, oh, their market cap dropped $500 million. Yeah, but the stock only went down like 2%. And they'll make that back once the game comes out. They'll be
Once they
fine.
announce it, they will.
Yeah. Like they're fine, so that means nothing. So really all that really counts here is what we as the viewer looks at. And I can tell you straight up, I mean, based on the leaks that we saw and from past experiences of different leaks, this one means jack shit because it's Grand Theft Auto 6. Nothing that comes out about that game, unless it is egregious, is going to make you not buy it or buy it at this point. You've already made up your mind before the game's even been announced because Grand Theft Auto is one of those games that you don't, you're pretty insulated in your own little gamer bubble if you've never heard of Grand Theft Auto or don't keep up with what they're doing. You either have decided that that's not your thing or it's your thing. So the leaks, to me, don't do anything to anyone who's already decided if they're invested or not. Because like I said, when I saw the leaks, the things that I did see didn't make me go, oh my god, they ruined it. And it also didn't make me go, oh, now I really need to play this game. I just looked at it and went, yeah, that's what Grand Theft Auto is. I don't expect much else. So those leaks didn't change much.
Yeah, I disagree. I definitely think, once again, legal aspects, it's all bad. Don't commit crimes. Don't be a criminal. I don't know if leaks really benefit anybody. Now I'm like you said with the whole, if there's like malpractice or if there's something wrong, that I count as whistleblowing, and that I think is different than leaking. But I think leaks generally don't benefit anybody. From like a developer perspective, like there's people who've put a lot of hard work into this game, but I think that having these leaks generally most oftentimes doesn't help a game in any way. Like you said, people who aren't going to buy the game, this isn't going to sell it to them because it's not a finished product. They're not seeing the best aspects of the game. They're not seeing the finished product. They're just seeing whatever the leaker was able to get in and get out and show. So they're obviously not getting a good first glance, because if it was the best first glance, it would probably be what the company developed for presentation, whether it's through an announcement, an advertisement, a trailer, whatever. But also, like, and this is going to go both for the players and for the developers, in that you don't know what you're seeing and you don't know context, right? When you see something like a trailer or you see like an announcement, they've curated it so that they are showing you what the game is about, but they're not generally spoiling it. And I think back to things like when The Last of Us 2 got leaked, right? The full game got leaked through that leakage. That definitely impacted, I think, The Last of Us Part 2 sales.
That is a
In that
case
people
where
did,
it is an absolute negative.
right? So like from the developer's perspective, it hurt them in that they probably lost sales. I mean, I think there was like death threats and stuff, but like that's just stupid in any capacity.
Yeah, that was
That has
its own
nothing to do with
special
leaks.
case.
But like they lost sales there, and then there's also an aspect with fans that like there were people who had the game spoiled for them, either by looking at the leaks themselves or just by sheer social media and how it works. Once that information's out there, you can't control what you're seeing, what you're reading. And so whether you're looking at leaks or whether you're just in community forums on Reddit or something, like the game gets spoiled for you. And like I worked really hard to avoid the spoilers so that it doesn't get ruined for me. But I know people who did have that game ruined for them before it even came out. They didn't have a choice. Um, the second part I look at is from a, you know, journalistic and games media coverage perspective, and that it's not good either. I know that they recently just had a situation where a famous YouTube insider kind of thing found out that it was just someone who had NDA, like non-disclosure agreements with companies and was getting press coverage and was just leaking it. And the problem with that situation is that it's going to be a lot harder for media coverage to get access to this because companies are going to start battening down what they show. So we're going to get less coverage. We're going to get less third-party coverage of games because companies are going to become very strict about who can see what and how. And I think that'll happen also internally. And it kind of sucks that it's not going to be as open. So I don't know. For me, I don't see any benefit for having games leaked. Like it's not something I look for. It's not something I'm excited about. I oftentimes it just from an enjoyment perspective of E3 or something like that, it kind of ruins the surprise. And then it also like there's nothing to be gained. So I found out that I saw things that I wasn't supposed to see a couple months earlier. So who cares?
Well, in this, like I said, I think it's very contextual. I think in most cases, like you said, it's not going to benefit anybody because it's generally taking something that's going to be spoilered, right? In this specific case, there's no spoilers. I don't know what anybody can, like, unless there's something else that I didn't notice in the massive amount of, like, screenshots and videos that came out of it. There's nothing being spoiled. It's just showing you, like, minor locations, like basic gameplay stuff, like it's nothing. In fact, I actually think this specific leak is kind of neat because it's showing you more of a behind the scenes of like what it's actually looking like while it's in very early build. I think it's actually kind of neat from that perspective to see it that way. But like in this specific case, I don't see how this, like, it doesn't affect, I don't think it benefits anybody really. I mean, it creates a little bit of extra buzz right now when there isn't any for GTA 6 because it just kind of gets the ball rolling again. Like, if anything, Rockstar might have just won a little bit of extra PR points again because now they can ride this wave that they've suddenly got into. And they don't even have to put any really work into a trailer. They can just, you know, make even like a quick press release on Twitter with just a screenshot of like Vice City and just say that. And all of a sudden for the next week, like that's the big story again. So like, if anything, the only people that this has really hurt is the developers because they're the ones that are working on this. And it feels like their work's been spoiled before it's been completed, which I understand. But as somebody on the inside or on the outside, I think it's kind of neat seeing it from this side because we don't get to see it like this very often. So seeing it with like the patches of like I'm coding is the wrong word, but like it's clearly not finished. So getting to see, it feels like you're actually like in the studio getting to see like little bits and pieces of it. And again, as I reiterate, it's GTA 6. And they didn't say anything about the story. They didn't even, like, you're not even seeing, like, music. You're here, like, very little NPC voice acting. Like, you're not getting given anything that tells you what's happening. You're literally just seeing, like, this could have just been fan-generated shit. Like, this could have been a mod in GTA 5 that somebody just threw out there. Like, it's nothing that's serious. Like, I think, if anything, the only real story to this entire leak is that some people hacked into Rockstar, and Rockstar's got to get this shit dealt with. But like, well, I don't think this is going to affect sales. I don't think this is going to affect like anybody's impressions of the game because they already made up their minds when the female character thing was announced. Those people have already made up their mind. But like, I don't think anybody looked at that gameplay or the screenshots and went, "Oh, this looks horrible. I'm not going to play this now. It's GTA 6. You knew what you were walking into 10 years ago when you thought this game was coming out.
Exactly. I think, like, and I'm not saying that this leak had spoilers for GTA 6. It's GTA 6. You're going to, guess what? You're stealing cars and committing crimes. That's pretty much the story.
What?
I know. But I think it's more just a general, like, you don't know what you're getting into when you get leaks, right? Like,
well, considering it's been a known thing for a while, like we were getting a female character, we were getting back to Vice City, like anything that we saw there was just relaying the information that, hey, here's confirming everything that we've heard.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're keeping up with gaming news, nothing new happened. If you don't keep up with gaming news and you happen to see these leaks, I guess you learned the thing that most of us have known for over a year now. So congratulations for catching up.
The other big thing that came out of this leak is that apparently the source code for Rockstar's, I think, engine got leaked, and apparently it got like bought out for like I think it was $100,000. So that's not good for Rockstar. Yeah,
no, that's like I said, the only people that are affected is the company and the people that work within it. If you're on the outside of Rockstar, this is either a non-story or you're just getting the hype train going again. Like, that's really what's happened here.
Yeah, so that guy's dealing with a 5-star wanted level. Good luck to him.
Well, the FBI is apparently looking for it, so
that's the 5 stars right there.
I mean, it's the that might be 6.
Yeah. Speaking of, just pivoting over, I was going to transition, but I didn't know what I was preparing there. Switching over, going from GTA 6 to Cyberpunk 2077, that game is blowing up, as I said it would back last year. I think we did our predictions episode, and I said Cyberpunk 2077 going to be coming back in hot. People are going to turn around and say that game is awesome, and guess what? It is. I think they announced this week that Cyberpunk was actually beating, was it Red Dead Redemption? No, what was it that they were beating? Was it Red?
I don't remember. I know what you're talking about, and I can't think of that story now.
Yeah, Cyberpunk was the, I think, #1 game on Steam for being played at the time.
It's also currently half off, so that's helped it.
So that game came out, so Cyberpunk 2077 is the most popular single-player game on Steam right now. I think it's actually beating out Elden Ring at the moment right now, so suck at Elden Ring. So it is on sale. It is coming off the heels of the Netflix show Edge Runners, which I watched the first episode. Not too bad so far. It's 1 episode in. I'm not used to the whole anime kind of cartoon thing, so
You're also getting Studio Trigger, which is a different kind of anime. They also are... They're unique. Let's go with that.
And what? So why are they? Because like the thing I found is like it was really weird. Like some of the like visual, like it would almost like be like still like it almost was like looking at a comic book, and that like a lot of still images, a lot of panning, and it felt like I was looking at a comic book.
Studio Trigger is well known for being one of the more unique and eccentric studios out there when it comes to their animation. They're known for being like, the animation is high quality, but they also go a little bit more in the wackier direction with the way that they do their imagery. Because like if you take a Cyberpunk anime in a lot of other studios, you're going to get a much more toned down, like more like gritty, serious thing. Trigger goes, let's just turn this up to 11 and see how stupid this gets.
Oh my god, yeah, it's like, it's surprisingly bright and very stylistic.
Yeah, like you see like the one character that of course everybody's drawing thousands of fan art, the girl that looks kind of young. I can't think of her name because I haven't seen the show yet, but she's got like the like pink or red eyes that she's got. But like you can see with characters like her that they're all about just making things look as over the top and just extremely wacky and ridiculous, and the action is also over the top, usually depending on if they're going for blood or not. It's usually really gory, but like not like horrific gory, but more just like the kind of like what the Hellsing anime or a Tarantino movie does, where it's just like it's just gratuitous, but it's not like gross. It's just it's just like
over the top.
There's more blood in that human than there's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But so like the action is also like super intense and super like well done too, which is something that they've always been very good at as well.
Yeah, it's really good. Like I'm probably gonna stick with it and watch it a little bit when I get time. But
yeah, it's definitely something I'm gonna look at when it's done.
Yeah, I thought it was done.
Oh, is it? Oh, I didn't. I wasn't.
Because it's Netflix. I think Netflix.
I didn't know if they dropped it in full or not. I usually just assume that it's weekly, like an anime would be. Because I'm also thinking that this is supposedly going in Japan too. Like my brain's going, it's Studio Trigger. Like this is a Japanese studio. They're probably going to be airing this weekly. But if they drop the
No,
whole
it's through
thing,
Netflix.
then I guess I got
It's
to watch
Netflix,
that
buddy.
sooner than later.
There you go. So my question to you is, I wanted to talk a little bit about first impressions on games and stuff, and like we see a lot of situations where bad games come out and doesn't matter in 2022 or 2021 even. They talk about like it brought me back to the idea of like Shigeru Miyamoto's like famous quote, like a delayed game is eventually good, a bad game is bad forever. Do you think it matters what state a video game comes out in now when it's first released? Does that matter anymore?
Much like the GTA 6 leak story that we just covered, I think it's contextual. I don't think there is a specific case where, you know, or not a specific case. I don't think there's like a blanket case where, any game can be improved to the point that it'll sell better. Like there are certain games that no matter what you do afterwards it's going to go away. Like if the next Madden game is a pile of crap, it doesn't matter what they do in the next 6 months to make it better. People have already made up their mind. But because Cyberpunk is a big deal when it came out, and because people at that point still trusted CD Projekt Red, I think that that's one of those cases where they can take the time to make it better. And also, again, they did have the advantage of having something like this anime that kind of brings attention back to the series that, also in link with the new DLC that's coming out soon. So that hit together, and with the game obviously being improved, does help. I think in other cases, you take a look at, say, No Man's Sky, where, I mean, from all accounts and purposes that I've read, the game is amazing now, but not a lot of people that I know are playing it. It's just a game that, obviously they spent a lot of work to making it better after the, let's be honest, quite shitty, like not shitty in terms of, it being buggy. It was just lifeless. There wasn't much to it. And they added a bunch to it, and it's way better. I played it, I want to say maybe a couple of years ago after some improvements, and they definitely had done some, but, the damage had already been done. Like, it really depends on the case. I think, especially with games that can be used in more of a games as a service games, like the Avengers game, there's nothing you can do. It's over. People made up their minds. Destiny was able to get better and better, but it also had a decent enough start that people stuck with it. And then once it got better and better, it helped. Final Fantasy XIV was a nightmare when it first launched, but because of the name, they were able to make it back when they completely revamped and re-released Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn. So I think it's dependent on what it is. I don't think the average game can do what Cyberpunk can do. I think you need a name behind it to keep it alive, or it needs to get re-released for, say, a new generation to maybe like put it back out there in the ether. I don't think like if you take X indie game and it launches terribly and they fix it over a year that it's suddenly going to get more popular, unless it's something really, really lucky like Rocket League. And Rocket League, for those who know, it's a very niche case of a game that was kind of done before, redone, put back, and suddenly caught fire. Like these situations won't happen often, if anything, again. So I don't think in the smaller studio cases this is ever going to be a thing that happens unless some specific like major streamer or major outlet like catches it and really throws it on the front page of things. And even then, it might still not have the best chance. Cyberpunk, on the other hand, it's pretty easy to do so because it's a very well-known name with a well-respected studio. So they definitely had a much better chance than I think others would have.
I don't think you're wrong in the sense that you can't fix any game that comes out bad. Like some games are just bad and not well done, and yeah, not every game can be salvaged. But I think the idea of it needs to be good out the gate is kind of.
I didn't say good out of the gate. Like I think it's the name value that's going to be the biggest factor of it.
See, I don't know about that because like I look at something like Cyberpunk. You're totally right. Is a game that it has the cachet of CD Projekt Red. People know what Cyberpunk is. It had some hype behind it. So yeah, that's an easy one to salvage. But I think I'd say most games, if a developer is willing to put the time, take it on the chin, and like suck it up and kind of put the effort in, you could salvage most games. And and turn it around. Is it going to be a blockbuster success? Probably not, but I think it could find its niche audience, especially as the price comes down. People are going to say, "Hey, I'm going to give this game a try." Like you did bring up No Man's Sky, and you got to think like that's a small studio. It's like something like I think like a dozen people, give or take. They salvaged that game that to the point now that people, when you think of like No Man's Sky, they're like, "Oh yeah, that's a game that didn't launch well," but I hear great things about it now. That you're going to have people coming in and jumping in, so you get that consistent sort of people buying in. Similarly, I think of something like Days Gone. Days Gone, when that came out, was a bit of a hot mess. And now it's one of those ones where it has a cult following and people like it. I think that's kind of what it is. I think the idea that if you put enough time, if you put enough effort into the game, and you have to be committed to it, and you have to accept the faults, the failures, and the losses that come from having a poorly launched game, you can still salvage it and have it come out be a cult classic, a cult success. And I think we see that with a couple different games that come out. I'm trying to think of like other ones. Like Fallout was like I think Fallout New Vegas was actually a buggy mess when that came out. Was it Fallout New Vegas that came out?
I honestly don't remember because
I know
think
Skyrim was
I
a
played
huge
Fallout
mess.
New Vegas like well after it launched.
Yeah, like Skyrim was a mess on PlayStation when that came out. Nobody thinks of that anymore when they think of that game. So like I think the idea of like, hey, you can't release a buggy mess because it's gonna just crash and burn. I don't think that's as important anymore as it is. I think you need to have a good PR team, a good marketing team, obviously to kind of get it back into the mainstream. But I think if you buckle down and put your nose to the grind, like you can salvage a broken game as long as you're willing to put the time and effort. And you've got companies like Ubisoft who generally don't do that. Like I think the last time that they really kind of polished up a buggy mess was Unity.
Yeah, because Watch Dogs Legions was a mess and they didn't do anything to really salvage that. So
Yeah. So like I think it depends on like the developer and the publisher and how much they're willing to like invest into making a good game. And I think a lot of times those people are just like, no, you know what? Let it go to die. You know, like Skull and Bones when that eventually happens. Like let it go die. We don't care. But I think if you did care and you did put the effort, I think you actually can salvage and stick a landing to a game that launches poorly, like Cyberpunk 2077 did.
so I'll ask for what you think the definition of salvaging a game means. I'm gonna go back to No Man's Sky for a sec because I was very curious. I wanted to see what the Steam chart said.
Hmm.
I think actually I can change my answer. They actually have salvaged it pretty well. So I'll give you the quick stats of what their player base was on Steam alone. So when it first launched in August 2016, peak was, or the average was 37,000 for that month. The next month dropped to 2,000, and then for pretty much on and off for like the next 2 years, like they were barely hitting 1,000. The odd month they would get better, but it didn't stay. Then they had a peak at 28,000 in August 2018. I don't know what came out around that point, but something major must have happened.
Probably some patches or a sale.
And then went right back down to 5, and then 3, and then 2,000, and then basically stuttered around there. August 2019, back up to 20,000, right back down to 5-ish. Now it's consistently for the last half a year, anywhere between 10 and 15,000. So you know what? That's actually, I would say that's salvaging it.
Yeah, so I'm not saying like it's going to be the next big thing. It's not going to be like worldwide. I think you need to have that success right at the gate because that's when you have everyone's attention. But I think what happens is like if you start building, it's a grassroots sort of strategy where you start building goodwill and animosity, and you have people saying, "Hey, like this game's good. This game is interesting." Like I think Cyberpunk is a textbook example of how you salvage a game. Hey, yep, game did not deliver as we thought it would. We're going to work to fix it. We're not going to stop till it's done. We're going to continually update it. We're going to continually talk about it, right? They have edge runners coming out, which, you know, brings us back to like the franchise, the IP. They're constantly talking about it, and, you know, people still play it. And so the expectation when you have a game that comes out that is absolute garbage, people then say, okay, well, I was interested in this game, but I've heard terrible things. Oh, it's $5. Oh, it's $10. Sure, let's see what this train wreck is. I'm interested, but at $5, I'll give it a shot. And as you do that, you realize, oh, this game is not as bad as I thought it was. And they start telling their friends, they start telling their friends, and that brings a snowballing effect where people are like, hey, the game is not as bad as you heard it was. Probably was at one point, but it's not anymore. And so the narrative becomes, hey, that game is not as bad as you thought, as it was initially. You should try it now. You're not going to get that full gangbuster sale at the beginning where everyone's buying it, but you'll have people say, yeah, it's a good game. You should try it. You should play it. And then it gets a bit of a cult following. And hey, maybe it gets a sequel. Like that's kind of what I see.
And like I said, I think there is context to it. I think another part of why Cyberpunk is doing better off than most do, it's because CD Projekt Red isn't doing anything else. So it's easy for them to put their marketing team behind the one game rather than, because like, are you seeing Witcher stuff anymore? No, it's pretty quiet on the Witcher front. You know, we talked about Ubisoft. Well, it's easy for Ubisoft to not care about the games they put out because they've got 15 other things that they can throw at any time that can kind of deflect, right? So if something fails, there's 1,000 other things they can be doing that'll cover it. CD Projekt Red doesn't have a choice. The No Man's Sky developers didn't have a choice. It's all they have. So in those cases, they're kind of more forced to do it. So like I think it's the difference of, you know, somebody making 10 games for somebody making one. I think it's a passion project versus just trying to make money. I think it really is a myriad of factors. In Cyberpunk's case, I think it's the hype train that it initially had, so it's always been fresh in people's minds, even when it was a buggy mess at launch. Obviously, the fact that it's, like I just said, a studio that's well respected. Also, it's the only thing they're really working on right now. I mean, I'm sure there's something they're working on currently that's new, whether it's a complete new IP, whether it's a new Cyberpunk down the road, whether it's, you know, more Witch. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing, but they've got not nearly as much room to, or they got plenty of room to just throw their PR department and just like make this better. Like just keep things running, keep people interested. And on the flip side, they also had these other projects they were doing, like this anime that, you know, had it been bad, I don't know if it would have changed anything either, but the fact that it just came out kept people familiar with what the series is. So if the game was getting improved, it's very easy for people to realize that it's still there because there's still things coming out for it. Whereas if we're taking like, I don't know, like here's a good example, Days Gone. I don't know anything that happened since the game launched. So you might because you're a little bit more in depth with it, but in terms of like as somebody who just is, you know, checking Reddit or checking Twitter or stuff like that, like Days Gone faded away very, very quickly and never really resurged anywhere. Except for the PC port, I should say. I
was gonna say Days Gone, I feel like has like a cult classic kind of following to it. Like if you ask PlayStation fanboys, like they say, like yeah, they want a Days Gone 2, like they stand behind it.
But in the sense of like the general public doesn't really recognize it as like a great game, because especially in the same way that we look at a lot of other Sony first party games, and there was nothing that really changed that opinion. So I think there's still like you said, there's the cult classic part of it, but I still think there's a majority view about that game that's maybe not that it's bad, but just that it's, I don't care.
Well, I think this comes back to, you know, the publisher and developer having to kind of accept and work on it. And I don't think either Bend or PlayStation ever acknowledged that, like, hey, this game needed some work. It's one of those ones where, is it a colossal failure? No, but it's not a hit as well. So, like, the company's not going to come out and say this is a failure. Like, I think you have to, like, this has to happen with games that are, like, abject failures that like have not hit the mark that have.
Well, Cyberpunk wasn't really an abject failure either because it made so much damn money in spite of it.
I'm talking about like reception, right? Like Days Gone did not have a panning. It was not like, oh my god, this is a broken mess. It was kind of like, it's a forgettable game. Cyberpunk was, this game is broken. No Man's Sky was like, this game is not what was delivered. Like those are abject failures. I wouldn't say something like Days Gone was a failure right at the gate. It was just kind of like a mediocre success or like a mediocre game.
That's fine. Like I'm more just referring to like games that, you know, didn't get like aren't like put at the top. Like you're talking about Cyberpunk, you know, having a resurgence and people being like, oh, this game's amazing now. Days Gone has never felt like that unless you're a cult classic fan. So like I'm trying to throw other examples that are otherwise out there, because I mean most games that are honestly the broken mess that Cyberpunk does, they don't recover because the company doesn't bother at that point. So there's not nearly as many to look at.
I think there's more. I think we just forget them. Like I said, Skyrim, if you remember, was a huge mess on PlayStation 3. Nobody talks about that.
And I don't even think a lot of people cared, honestly, because they got what they wanted. Because let's be honest, Elder Scrolls games aren't exactly, even at their best, are not exactly, you know, bastions of coding. But otherwise, like, this story is, it's interesting because you want to think that it's like, oh, the developers like busted their ass to make it better. I think there's a part of it that's just the marketing machine was so strong that this, even if this game failed, it was going to be really hard for it to still not recover. as long as they even put like the bare minimum in.
Yeah, so a couple games I'm looking at here, I just found a list. They were talking Elder Scrolls is 1, Battlefield 4, SimCity, Fallout New Vegas, Halo Master Chief Collection. Like there is a history of them like kind of turning out better once they put the effort in,
But even then,
yeah,
like
it's
there's definitely some that like even with the examples that you gave, like most of them aren't like being looked at as like, oh man, they made it so much better. Like you could say, well, Skyrim, like yeah, but people were still saying Skyrim was amazing even at launch. It just like wasn't nearly as broken a little bit later. I think most of these games it just came down to they didn't release well and the names just kind of sold themselves anyway. Because I mean, Fallout 76 still did really well, even though a lot of people can't stand that game. So
I disagree. Like I look at like Battlefield 4. I think Battlefield 4 is regarded as one of, if not, no, Bad Company is the best one, but it's regarded as like one of the best ones, and people really clamor for.
is
Same
it
with, like,
though,
Fallout New
or is
Vegas.
it because like everything since has been so egregiously bad?
Yeah, but I mean, like it'd be easy for Battlefield 4 to get thrown into that loop as well, then. But it's not. It's regarded as like, hey, this is what we want. This is what we expect. Same with like Fallout New Vegas. That's the one that everyone's clamoring for. Is they want another New Vegas, right?
Well, yeah, and we're also talking about a time where we still at least had like a consistent level of like games not being released as a pile of garbage because they realized day one patches could solve most things.
I guess so. Yeah. They also have like a couple other here. So other ones that they mentioned was like Drive Club, which I don't think that ever came back. Same with Sonic the Hedgehog, Aliens Colonial Marine, and Ride to Hell.
Yeah, those are all games that just never even had a chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll find out pretty soon when Sonic Frontiers comes out as well. And Skull and
Yeah, for
Bones.
sure.
Hey, those are going to be two great examples to see how that gets receptive.
Yeah, good luck to that one. Adam, I want to pivot over and enter the virtual reality world. We also found out this week that PlayStation VR 2 is not going to be compatible with PlayStation VR. I guess we're going to call it PlayStation VR 1 games. What do you make of this? Is this a smart move? Is this a bad move? Where do you fall on that thought?
I don't know. Like this is the thing that I said as soon as I saw that news initially that, oh, there's going to be like no backwards compatibility between the two. I don't know how VR changes things between consoles. Like I don't know how the technology is different because we're not just talking graphics, we're not just talking like the hardware in terms of its processing, its like ability, just the CPU of its speed. We're talking about things like the tracking abilities of the hardware. We're talking about like visually how it plays on your headset. We're talking about like things that are a little bit more different and a lot more integral than just graphics and like processing ability. So I don't actually have an answer of whether it's good or bad if there's no backwards compatibility of those machines, because I don't actually know tech wise like if this is something that is even feasible. If it was feasible and they just opted not to do it, then screw, like that's bullshit. But like I can't prove it, and I haven't read anything that has told me that, oh, this was the easiest thing for them to do. So I'll take the kind of like the laissez-faire thing and just being like, meh. Like if it sounds like most of the major games are going to get reported anyway. Now, if they charge you full price and expect you to pay full price for it, even if you owned it on PSVR original, that's bullshit. I think they should be trying to do the same thing that they've been doing with PS4 to PS5, where if you had the old copy, you can get the new one, just download the new version of it. I think that's something they should be looking into. But if you're also a new customer to PSVR 2, well, boom, there's all this extra stuff that comes out at launch. And like we said, the library is going to be a big deal. Well, if there's a bunch of improved versions of games, like, say, Beat Saber, Super Hot, what's the... Not Blood and Guts. There's one that's...
Blood and Truth?
Yeah, Blood and Truth. Like if all those have, like... Or Astro's Rescue Mission, I think, is another one. Like, if all those have proper versions and that comes out for people to go right off the bat with, like, that's good. That's a good library thing. And then when you mix whatever other stuff is being worked on, like the Horizon VR experience and other things, like we saw the Star Wars thing on the State of Play recently, I think there's a lot of room for this to grow. So I don't have like a love or hate on this, because I don't really know if it was feasible to transfer them or not. And B, like, for a lot of people, you're going to be going into this fresh anyway, so I don't know if it affects nearly that many people in comparison. Because I think this might be potentially a generation where VR gaming actually becomes a bit more receptive in terms of like people actually purchasing it. Because I mean, I don't know the sales numbers for the original, but like I imagine it's going to be more this time around because it's definitely getting better. And I think more people are interested now because the games are starting to look a little bit better.
Yeah, for me, it's one that, obviously it sucks. Like, I have a collection of VR games. I'd like to play those, but at the same time, it gives me hope that this might actually be I don't want PSVR 2 to just be, hey, it's PSVR 1, but just iterative and a little bit better. Like, I'm hoping that they change how it's tracked, how it controls, because it's not truly immersive with the VR 1. And so I'm hoping that the idea that the games aren't available is an indication that we've made some changes and how we utilize this technology isn't like how we used it before, and so it's not as compatible. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. I think the one problem or the one challenge that Sony faces for itself, and it sounds like they're working on it in terms of having more games in development and sort of re-releasing the old games, is that you are going to need to have a library of games. I think one of the things that suffered from PSVR was, one, a lack of games, and just the experiences that you had, like, they all felt like gimmicks, they all felt like tech demos. And I think PSVR 2 needs more games in that sense. And so starting fresh with a new library, I know they said there's something like 100 plus games being developed, but like those have to be ready to go. Otherwise, it's just gonna be a situation where you have 1, 2, 3 games a year getting launched, the rest getting like shovelware kind of releases. So I think it's a challenge for them, but it gives me hope of what this system actually is.
Yeah. Like, again, it's the same thing we've been saying too, just with our general thoughts of the PSVR. It's just we need to wait and see, because we still need to know like what else is coming out. Like, how is this thing actually going to feel? What are all the new features? Like, there's still so much to it. So like, this is a story that I think at first glance people will be like, oh, that's bullshit. How could they do that? And my first instinct was to go, okay, there must be a reason for this. Whether it's not that simple to just port these things, or it may just be that the new hardware is that much different, in the same way that like the PS3 and the PS4 were two completely different machines based on what they put in that. So I think there's a part of like, there's still the tribalism because people can't help themselves, because if they see a negative Sony story, they have to jump on it. And I think also Sony fans, even at the same light, like they see a negative Sony story and they either do one of two things. They either defend it to death, or they get like extremely worrying, being like, oh God, is Sony finally turn? Oh no, or is my just buying decisions in jeopardy? I think it's a matter of like, I don't think there's a way to lean either way here, because it's just, there's more information that needs to be needed. There's just not enough for me to make a call on this. I think it's a mixture of like, that kind of sucks, but I'm also sitting there being like, there's got to be a legit reason for this too, because it's VR. This isn't just, you know, a console going to another console, because PS4 and PS5 are basically the same thing, just more powerful. Whereas from what we've kind of figured out with what the VR2 is going to be like, it seems like it's going to be a whole different beast.
Yeah. I'm excited to see what it becomes, and hopefully, I haven't been sold yet, but I think I need to see a little bit more before I go. Also, I don't really know how VR is going to fit in the man cave down here, so a little bit hesitant to get that.
Yeah, like my interest has never been more piqued, although I can say that until we get like another big feature on what's going on with that thing, it's now started to temper.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? Like, again, like if you get something really, really cool that is just unexpected, you never know. And again, the affordability is always a big part of what is going to make this machine a big deal too. So it's more of a wait and see thing again, like I said.
Yeah. Adam, you have an Untimely review for us. Void Bastards, I believe. So tell us a little bit about that. But before you do, ladies and gentlemen, once again, we are not influential enough, not big enough, or rich enough to get games ahead of time. So we review them on our own dime, on our own time, bringing you reviews of games we play when we can, as we can, and that makes them Untimely reviews. Adam, tell us about Void Bastard.
So a couple weeks ago, I was in a real weird spot of I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do. Every gamer loves that position. You stare at your backlog, you stare at your libraries on Steam, on whatever console you're running, and you go, I don't want to do any of these. I know I can finish some of these. I don't want to do any of this. And Void Bastards has been that game that I played a long time ago and decided, you know what? I'm in a Discord with people just chatting away. I need something to at least play so that I'm like not completely sitting here doing nothing. But what's something that isn't going to require much of me, and what's something that also isn't going to require much of me, and I haven't done 1,000 times already? Because sure, I could put on like golf with your friends, which I do a lot. I could put on Deep Rock Galactic, which I've done a lot. But like, it's old news. I've done it 1,000 times. It's no different to me. I wanted something that was at least a little bit new-ish to me. Because Void Bastards, when I played it, I played a tiny bit of it, but I didn't do much. So I finally got to doing it here, and I managed to finish an entire run with it. Now, granted, I played on the easiest difficulty because, again, just wanted to mindlessly do it. I also wanted to finally finish this damn thing, just to see like what the quote-unquote end was going to be, because it's a roguelike. So for those who don't know, roguelike is mostly procedurally generated. You know, you're going through until you either die or unless you finish the whole game, which, depending on how hard a difficulty you're playing on, is impossible sometimes. But that's kind of the point. In this game, I just put the options in to be like, hey, I more just want this to be a fun romp. It's a first-person shooter where it's cel-shaded. It kind of feels like almost like Simpsons-esque, like in terms of its like cartoony-ish design to it. The charm of it that really sets it apart from, I think, most games is the fact that like most of the voice acting is meant to be like posh British, like humoresque. If anybody remembers the Stanley Parable, the narrator for that game is also sort of the narrator and your like, I guess, computer companion in the game that just kind of tells you what's going on. But like all the enemies have this like very posh British thing. Like the first enemies you'll encounter usually are called janitors, and it's like these floaty, grumpy old guys that all of a sudden, like if they come across you, be like, "Oi, what are you doing here?" And just that kind of charm to it, because it's so different from what you normally hear. It's instead of it just being like the, "Hey, where's he going? Get after him!" Like it's the same kind of like two voice actor sounds over and over again, whereas this feels a lot different. It's also a little bit more crude. Like on screen right now, if you're watching on YouTube, there's these characters called juvies, and they'll just, I think they straight up will just call you fuckface. It's, or at least something like that. Like it's a lot more heavy on like the over the top dialogue, whether it's just like really ridiculous sounds. There's a character, I'm trying to think, I think they're called not vacation tourists, and they're just these blob things with a hat on them. And one of the things they'll say when because they're basically walking bombs. If you get too close to them, they'll set off. And one of the things they'll say, it's very random, is "my luggage," and then they'll explode, and that does damage. So like it's stuff like that. It's weird, and it's a mixture of like weird, wacky, and crude all at the same time. And the gameplay itself kind of is the other selling point, which is you get on a ship that you go through a star map. You select this one. You're finding items to create these items that will get you to the end of the game. So like you might need, you know, these two things to build this one thing that progresses you to the next part of the game. And you go on the star map, you see a ship, it'll tell you what the enemies are, it'll tell you generally what you'll find there, whether it's the specific key item on that ship. Sometimes there's more than one, because there will be like these locked chests that if you open, they'll give you a random item, but there's always one specific item that's on that ship. And then there's also like things they'll tell you, oh, here's the ammo you'll find for all the weird, wacky guns that you have. Here's where you'll find like specifically fuel for your ships, or if you need food, there's this. Or it'll tell you, hey, this has got a medical machine, so if you really need to get your health back, you can do that. Or hey, here's a thing that splices your DNA so you can get a couple new perks. So there's things like that that kind of tell you ahead of time, so you can decide if you want to skip this part, if you want to do this ship. I just usually did everything that I did because, you know, I want to have every single bit of ammo that I could possibly do, because I play JRPGs a lot. I like having my inventory completely full, even though I don't need to. And at least from the gameplay that on easy mode gives you, like it's still challenging enough depending on the kind of enemies, because there's one set of enemies specifically that's the hardest. They hit you hard. They have so much health, and there are ways to make it easier on you. Like there are guns that will freeze them in place. There will be things that poison them so they lose health over time. There are more like powerful weapons. You can upgrade certain ones so they have a little bit more damage, or they do even something a little bit more special down the line. It's mostly just like usually you pop in for an hour, play a few ships, you know, maybe you die, you start over with whatever new character you get with a different set of perks. You keep some of the stuff, I believe. I don't know if you keep all the ammo and money, but you do keep all the research that you've done. So like you slowly get more and more stuff as you go. I didn't ever lose my main character because it's easy. It's kind of hard to do so, but there were a couple of times where I kind of my own misfortune and idiocy, put myself in a really bad situation, but somehow managed to get my ass out of it. And some of the, especially later on, the enemies will get improved too, so they're much harder. And they'll also have more things that happen on the ships that will make things more difficult. Like the power will go out all the time, so you'll have to be constantly going back to the generator and turning it back on, which slows you down. Maybe oxygen is a little bit in short supply. Maybe there's a lot of smoke in the ship, so it's really hard to see. There's maybe just everything's on fire, so it's really easy to take damage. So there's always something different to change it up, especially as the game goes further and further in. In the early stages, it's pretty bare bones just to kind of get you familiar, but the longer and longer you go, the more it changes up and the more harder it gets. So I think it's... I wouldn't say it's a special game. It does a good job for what it does. It's something that you get to pop into once in a blue moon, and you get your fix, and you can come back if you want to, and if you don't, you don't. I don't think it's a must-play, but I think it's something that if, you see on Steam for under $10, it's a nice pickup if you're just looking for something to kind of throw a few hours at and see if you're interested.
Nice. So on the 6-point scale, 1 being awful, up to 3 being kind of negative, 4 and up being great, 6 being amazing, where does this fall?
I would say it's a solid 4. Like
Nice.
above average, does what it needs to do. I think the charm is what really sets it apart. I think if it was just the same old voice acting you hear, I think I would put it down to a 3, but because it has the added like witty banter, the extra like
Charm.
wackiness to it, it does set itself apart. So it does feel a lot more fun, especially in the early going. Because anytime I was playing in the Discord, anybody who hadn't seen it before, they'd be like, what the fuck are you playing? Like, and it always was with a laugh. It's always like, what is that?
Yeah, I was looking at some of the images, and it kind of has almost like a 90s Doom meets like Serious Sam kind of look.
I feel like if Adult Swim was making games, this would be one of them.
Cool. Yeah, it looks cool.
Yeah,
Awesome. Well,
there's definitely like, it's like I said, there's nothing special that really sets it apart. It's just it really takes what's normally pretty procedurally generated and like samey gameplay, but at least throws a little bit more of, I guess, like eccentricity to it, so that way it feels like you're playing something a little bit different, even though it's not actually that different.
Mm-hmm.
It's just fun. Like it does a good job of being, I guess, like funny enough that it keeps you like smiling and interested, and then it switches it up gameplay wise enough that it doesn't feel too samey all the time. By the time I got to the end of it, I would find myself like rushing through the ships just to find the things that I need and get through it. If the ships were like the same couple of enemies that I'd faced over and over again, or if there was a specific, there are some ships that you come onto and you look at the perks and you're like, I need that item. This ship sucks. I need to get in and out of this as quickly as possible. So you just start darting through to quickly find the thing you need. And especially if it has a helm, because the helm will give you the map of all the chests in the map, including the one you're looking for. So basically, if you see a ship that you really hate, you go, okay, I know I'm going straight to here, and as soon as I see where the big chest is, I'm running to that, and I'm getting the hell out of this goddamn place before it gets worse. So there is some of those moments where I imagine if I was playing on a much harder difficulty, it would be tense as shit. But because it's more of like, I'm mostly fine, it's just a case of, okay, I need to get out of this before I, not die, but not have a good time either.
Fair enough. That sounds awesome. Cool. Speaking of games, we have our own little game that we play here, Adam.
Unfortunately.
Trophy Stumpers. You would love it. Don't act like you don't. Trophy Stumpers. I give you 10 trophies or achievements. You have 10. You get 2 guesses over 10 trophies to guess as quickly as you can. Ready to go?
I was actually going to ask, because I didn't realize we were switching to this. Did you want to do your Elden Ring thing beforehand?
Nah, we'll save it for next week.
You'll save it for another time? Okay, then let's
I feel like
I
I have a lot of thoughts, and I'm crashing a little bit. So
all
we'll
right.
save it for next week.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Trophy Stumpers. 10 questions. 10 trophies or achievements. Let's go.
Okay, you're right. You are crashing. Okay, let's get this over.
Number 1. I'm still dealing with a sleep-deprived child. My nights are broken. It's a huge mess. Number 1. Back in the mud. Number 2. What?
I was just gonna be like, it's not an actual guess, but my brain's like Mud Runners, because that's a game that's literally just about driving in the mud. But no.
Back in the mud is number 1. Number 2. Third time lucky.
Okay.
Number 3. It was this big.
All right, I like that one, but I'd say I don't have anything at this point still.
Number 4. Buckle up.
Okay, so potentially driving game.
Number 5, Gold Rush. So once again, we'll do the bottom 5. Back in the Mud. Third Time Lucky. It Was This Big. Buckle Up. And Gold Rush.
I don't have a guess still.
All right. Number 6, Take From the Rich. Number 7, Pony Up.
Oh, well then. Okay, let's finish it off though. See if I can guarantee this.
What do you think? What do you think it is?
Well, you
You
suddenly.
had 2 guesses.
I was thinking vehicles, and now that all these things are blending together, I'm thinking horses. So I'll let you keep this going, but I'm pretty sure I've got it now.
Okay. Bountiful.
Okay.
To Greener Pastures.
Okay.
Paying Respects.
Okay. So it's Red Dead Redemption 2.
It is Red Dead Redemption
Yeah.
2, sir. Well done, well done. I wasn't sure if I was gonna get you, but Pony Up totally.
Yeah, if you
I
say
think
Pony
the
Up to
one
the
that you
end,
should
you
pick.
might have put me a little bit worried, but as soon as Pony Up came, I'm like, okay, wait. Yeah, this all fits. Never mind.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how you're gonna go, but well done, sir. You got another one. You did pretty well at these games, to be honest.
Well, as long as you don't go way off the board, like you put a couple, like what was the Mod Nation Racers one that was just like, yeah, that's way too far back, or the Mass Effect one where my brain didn't go, oh yeah, I forgot the trophies are really vague in that game.
Hey, you talked a big game. I had to take.
I did, and I deserved everything that happened in that.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Adam. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to be part of the show, if you want to include questions, comments, concerns, submit your own trophy stumper suggestions, you can always do so by emailing us at pixelplaypodcast@gmail.com. We have a Discord that's in the link as well. If you want to join us there, and other fans, we always like to hang out, chat, we talk, we trash talk. It's all good fun and a good time. Or you can always follow us on our socials at PixelPlaycast. That's on Instagram and Twitter, or you can find us on YouTube by searching for Pixel Play Podcast. We'd greatly appreciate it if you have not done so yet to like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm. Leave comments. Just tell us generally what you're thinking on any of the topics that we talk about. We really appreciate it. Otherwise, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, and we will see you guys next week. Bye for now.